this video, we're going to create a real-time file transfer app using Node.js and Socket.io. So here I have 3 pages opened, and as you can see, we are seeing ourselves as well as the other people that are connected. And if I open this page in this window, as you can see, everyone already sees that a new person has joined, and if I leave, that person is removed from all the other clients, and we can send anyone any file we want. And let's try to send a file. So let's say a space cat will send a file to Comet Chaser. So we can click here and choose our file, and you'll see the file was downloaded. So if I go to downloads, you'll see he received the file. This works in real time using Socket.io. If you have never used Socket.io, don't worry, it will be very easy to follow along. So let's get started. Okay, I have an empty folder opened in VS Code. Now let's start by creating our basics file. So index.html, a style.css, and finally a main.js. In the HTML, let's create basic markup and link our style sheet, as well as our JavaScript file, and open it with live server. Let's say hello for now. Okay, in the styles, I'm going to say everything will have a margin of 0, a padding of 0, and a box sizing of border box. And then target the body, which will have a font family of poppins, a display of flex, align items will be center, and justify content will also be center. And it will have a height of 100 viewport heights. And for the background color, let's choose a grayish color, so background color. Okay, now let's write our markup. So in our HTML, I'm going to first have a container. Inside that, we're going to have a header. Inside this, we're going to have a div with a class of dp, and let's just use an emoji here. And then we're also going to have a paragraph text with a class of name, and let's just say coder. And then we're going to have a div with a class of peoples, and inside this div, we're going to show all the other peoples. So let's style the container. So in the style sheet, we're going to first say .container. It is going to have a width of 100%, but I'm going to say max width, maximum width should be 500 pixel, and a background color of white, and a minimum height of 300 pixel, a border radius of, let's say, 12 pixel, and it can have some box shadow as well. Okay, now let's target the header. So our header will also have a display of flex and align items of center. Let's give it some padding. Let's say padding of 20 pixel and a gap of 12 pixel. And it will also have a border at the bottom, so we're going to say border dash bottom. It will be 1 pixel solid, and for the color we can say hashtag CCC. Then our DP, it will have a size of 50 pixels, so we're going to say width of 50 pixel, a height of 50 pixel, and a border radius 50%, so it will be circle. And let's just use a random background color. Let's center the emoji, so we can use flex here again. So we're going to say display flex, justify content, center, and align items to also be center. So our emoji is now centered. And let's just increase the size, so we can say font size to be 24 pixel. Now let's target the name. So the name will have a font weight of 600. And let's change the color, so we can say color to be this color. Okay, for testing, let's also add some people in our people's div. So here we are going to say all the people inside this div will have a class of person, and all the person will also have a DP and a name. And let's just copy this a few more times. So this is how they're looking. Let's go to our CSS. Here let's target our peoples. So it will have a display of flex. We are also going to say flex dash wrap to wrap, and a padding of 20 pixel, and a gap of also 20 pixel. And finally, let's add a media query to make it look good on mobile also. So let's say add media, and then we're going to say max width of 600 pixels. So any screen size below 600 pixel. We're going to say our body will have align items of flex end, so at the bottom like this. And then we can target our container, and it should have a border radius. The top corners will be 16 pixel, and the bottom corners will be 0 and 0. And we can also say min height, minimum height should be 80 viewport height, 80% of the screen. Okay, now what I want to do is, whenever we click on one of the people, it should open our file explorer. So let's see how we can do that. So for that, what I'm going to do is, instead of div, we're going to use label, HTML label tag, because then inside here I can also have an input, a type will be file, and let's give it a name. For now, let's just say coder-1. The ID will also be the same, and in our label we are going to add a for attribute, and the for will be the same, coder1. So now if I click on it, it will open our file explorer. But I don't want to show this file, so what I'm going to do is, in the CSS, target the person, and then we're going to say it will have a position of relative as well as cursor of pointer. Target person and a file input inside that, so we're going to say input with type equals to file, and this will have a position of absolute and opacity of 0. So now you can't see the file input, but if I click on it, it opens the file explorer, which is what we want. And this will also work the same way. So for now, let me just delete this and comment this out. So we're going to add this using JavaScript. Now I'm going to give our header an ID of me. Here we're going to show my profile picture and my name basically. We can target this in main.js. So we can say my name equals to document.querySelector, target the div with the ID of me and then element with the class of name. So which will be this one. And then we also have the DP. So we're also targeting the DP. Now after that, what I want is every person to have a random name emoji and background color. So I'm going to have an array of that. Like so. So here I have an array of names, which is an array of object. Every object has a name, a random emoji, and background color. And I have a few of them. You can have more or less. It's up to you. And then I want to create a function that will return a random name from this list. So let's create that. So function get random name. So first what we're going to do is get a random index. So if our name has 10 items, we want a number between 0 and 10. So how we're going to do that? We're going to say const I equals to math.floor and then math.random times names.length, and this will give us a random index, and then we can simply return names and the item at that index. And let's test it out. So we can say const me equals to get random name and console.log, open it, and here we have an object. It has an emoji and a name. If I refresh, we get a different name. Okay, great. So now what I want to do is replace this with the name we just got. So let's do that. We're simply going to say our name will have a text content of me.name. Our DP will also have a text content of me.emoji and a background color of me.bg, because bg is the background color. So now if I save and refresh, every time we get a random name and random image. Okay, now what we want to do is when someone else joins, we want to show them here. So how we're going to do that? So for that we'll need a server, that way both clients can be synced. So what I'm going to do now is create a folder called public and put all the files in that folder, because now we're not going to use this server. Instead we're going to create a Node.js server. So what I'm going to do is open our terminal, and here we're going to say npm init-y, which will initialize a new Node.js project, and then we're going to say npm I for install and we want to install Express, we want socket.io, and we also want course. And finally we also nodemon, so we're going to say npm I-d for development, so it will only be installed as a development dependency, and we want nodemon. And then it will have a package.json and package.log.json. So in our package.json we can have a script named dev, and it will run nodemon and then index.js. So you'll have to create this file, new file, index.js. Let's start by requiring all the file that we installed. So first we'll have express, so we're going to say const express equals to require express, and then we want to require create server from require http, and this is built in, so we did not have to install it. And then we're going to import server from socket.io, so this one we did install, and also course from course. And then we're going to say our app, const app equals to express, and then we're going to say app.use course and app.use express.static, and we're going to set public. So we're setting our public folder as our static files folder. And then we can have a port variable, so we're going to say const port equal to process.env.port or 3000. And then we're going to have to create our server, so I'm going to say const server equals to create server, and we're going to pass our app, and then we're going to say io equals to new server, and we're going to pass the server object. So this is for socket io. And after that we can listen to our server, so we're going to say server.listen, listen at the port, and if it starts successfully we're going to say console.log server is running at port. So now we should be able to say npm run dev, and we get server is running on port 3000. So let's try to open it. So here I'm going to say localhost :3000, and this is the same thing, but now it is being served by our Express project because we have set our public folder as static. Okay, so now what we want to do is whenever we open this page, we want to send an event to our server saying that we have joined. So how we are going to do that? First, in our HTML, what we can do is in our script we're going to say script source equals to socket.io/socket.io.js. Now we don't have this file in our folder, but we don't need it because we installed it in our server. We can access it by doing this. We don't have to download it or anything. And then in our main.js, first we're going to say const socket equals to io, and io function will coming from our socket script. And then we're going to send an event to our server, so we can simply say socket.emit, and let's say the event name is going to be join. So whenever we join with our browser, we're going to send an event to our server, and the event name is join, and we can pass some data, and the data will be me. And what is me? Me is just a random name, which is a random object from this array. Now we have to listen to this join event in our server. So here first we are going to have to say io on, and then we're going to say connection. So whenever there is a connection, we'll have a callback function which will receive the socket object, and then we can say socket.on, and the name of the event we want to listen to, and we want to listen to the join event. So here we'll have some data. So let's say person, and let's just try to console log it. So console.log log the person. In our Node.js console, we get this object. So this is being sent from the client to the server. Now we want to keep track of all the people. So what I'm going to do is have a variable called const persons equals to, it will be an array. So then here peoples.push, and then we can push whatever the data we got, person as well as a ID. So the ID will simply be socket.id, and this should be curly brace. Okay, so what is happening? So when we open this page, we send an event to our server, and our server gets the data and puts it in our people. But we also want to notify that to other people also. So to do that, we're going to say io.emit, and then we can say people list. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm calling it people's list, and here we're going to send all the peoples as data. So since we're emitting this from our server, we have to listen for this event in our clients. So here we can say socket.on, and we're going to listen for people's list, and we're going to receive the people's list as arguments. So we can say list, and let's just try to console log it. So console.log, and we're going to log the list, and we're going to console log it in browser. So inspect, and let's just try to refresh, and we get one object. Now let's create a new window and also open it, inspect, and here we got two. So one for this one and one for robodog. So if we had another one, another page, now as you can see we have three array, as well as we got the three array here and on this page also, but when to show them inside here. So what we're going to do is first target our container. So we're going to say const people's container equals to document.querySelector people's, which is this div over here. And then we're going to loop over our list, and for each item in the list we're going to add a person in our people's div. So first we're going to say people's container.innerHTML equals to nothing. So if anything was inside this container, empty it out, and then say list.for each. So for each element in our list, let's have a person. Okay, then what we want to do is create this dynamically using JavaScript. So first we're going to create the label. So we're going to say const label equals to document.createElement label, and we are going to set the for attribute to person.id, which will be a unique socket ID, and adding a class list of person. So we are creating the label, adding this for attribute, and then adding the class. Inside the label we also have DP and a paragraph and a file. So let's create those also. So we're going to say const dp equals to document.createElement. We're going to create a div at the dp class, and the text content will be person.emoji, and the background style will be person.bg. We're going to do similar for the name. So name equals to createElement p at the class of name, and person, and the text will be person.name. And finally we'll have the input. So createElement input, the type will be file, and id will be person.id. And finally we're going to append the dp name and input inside the label, and then append the label in our people's container. So refresh, and then create a new window, and if we say localhost 3000, if I open another window, now we have all of them in each of our window. But here we have robodog here, alien here, and alien here also. So if we are already here, we don't need to be here also. So what we're going to do is say on top of our loop, we're going to say if person.id is same as our socket.id, which means it is me, so don't show me in people's list also. So we are simply going to say return, don't do anything. Refresh, new window, localhost 3000, and here we have flying saucer here and fast rocket here. So we're not showing ourselves in the people's list. Okay, let me just quickly do some styling here. So in our style.css, we're going to say our person will have a display of flex, and the flex direction will be column, and align items will be center. And let's give it a width of 60 pixel. Refresh, and we can also say text align center. Now you will notice that as I refresh, it keeps on adding a person. So we need to fix that. So what we're going to do is we also want to react to when a person disconnects. So we're going to say socket.on, going to say disconnect, and this will automatically fire when the user closes the page or refreshes it. So here we're going to say we're going to have a callback function. We're going to first find the index of the person that just disconnected. So we're going to say const I equals to peoples.findIndex, and we're going to find the person that has an ID same as the ID of the person that just disconnected. So we can say socket.id, and if we have that, if the index is not equal to -1, which means if we have an ID, if we have an index, then we can just remove it from our pupils array. So we're going to say pupils.splice I and 1, and this will remove the person that just disconnected from our pupils array. And then what we're going to do is we are going to have to send this also. So we're sending the updated list back to our client. So now if I refresh, as you can see, we don't have anyone, but if I have a window, new window, and say localhost colon 3000, now we have them. And if I close the window, the person gets removed. Okay, it is working. So now what we want is to handle the file share. So for now, if I select a file, nothing happens because we're not handling that. So let's handle that. So in our main.js, here we're going to say our input, which is our file input, .add event listener, and we're going to listen for the change event. We're going to have the event in our callback, and then we can say const file equals to event.target.files and 0. So the first file. And then if we don't have a file, we can simply return. But if we do have a file, we're going to say console.log, and we're going to log our file. Refresh, click here, and let's select this one, inspect, and here we have our file object in our console. So now we're going to send this file to Planet Hopper or whoever we click on. So how we are going to do that? So let's create a function. We're going to say, let's say the function name will be send file, and we're going to pass the file, and we'll have to create that. So we're going to say function send file. It will receive file, but it will also have to receive the ID of the person. So we're going to say target ID, and we'd have to pass that also. So that will simply be socket, actually not socket, but it would be our person.id. So whoever we clicked on, the ID of him. Using socket IO using P2P is a little bit complicated. So what I did is created a simple library. So this is the library. I'll leave the link to it in the video description. You can install it using npm, but what we want to do is click on the download the latest release, and then Ctrl S to save it. And we're going to add it in our public folder, and let's just rename it to something like P2P-FT. P2P stands for peer-to-peer and FT for file transfer, and we have to link it in our index.html. So here we can say script source, it will be P2P-FT.js. So the way we're going to use it is in our main.js, we're going to have a variable called file transfer. So we're going to say let file transfer, and we'll set its value when our socket connects. So we're going to say socket.on connection. It should be connect, not connection. Here we're going to say file transfer equals to new P2P file transfer, which is coming from our library, and it will take socket as well as a backend event name. I'll explain this soon. So we're going to call it signal as well as an object. And here we can listen to a few callback function. You can see it in here. So we have on progress, on complete, on error, and on connection state change. The one we're interested in is on complete. So when the file transfer is complete, when that happens, we'll run a function. The function will receive blob, which will be the file data as well as the file name. And for now we can simply console log them. So console.log the blob and the file name. Okay, the signal is the event that will be sent to our server. So what happens is, let me open a new page, refresh here. So let's say I send a file to Comet Chaser. So what will happen is our client will send the data to server, and then server would have to send the data to this client here. So the signal is the name of the event that sends the data. So we are going to have to listen to this in our server. So in our index.js, we're going to say socket.on, and we're going to listen to the signal. The signal will contain the file data, and let's say the data is called message. And here all we would have to do is say io.to, and we are going to send that data specifically to the message.to. So whoever we are sending the file to, and then we're going to say from will be socket.id. So the person sending, and the data will be the message. So let's see what is happening once again. If I send a file to Comet Chaser, this client will send a request to our server over here. Server will take the data and then send the data to this client. So this client can receive the data and download it. Inspect here, and actually refresh, and click here. We want to send this file. Inspect, and nothing is happening. Actually, that is because in our main.js over here we have to do something. So here we are going to say file transfer dot send file. We're going to send the file, and we're going to say target ID as well as our file. So let's create the new window and open the page, and let's send the file. As you can see in the console, we got the file as well as the name of the file. So now all we have to do is download it. So to download it, it is very simple. So first we're going to have to go to our file transfer. So first we're going to have to create URL. So we're going to say url.create object URL, and we're going to create an object URL from our blob, which is our file data. And then we're going to create an anchor tag. So we are going to say const a equals to document.create element a. The href will be the URL we just created, and then we're going to say download equal to file name. So it will save the file as the file name, and we click on the a text so it gets downloaded. And finally we can free up the memory by saying url.revoke object URL and the URL. So refresh, new window, and localhost :3000. Let's all have another client, so localhost :3000. We have 3 clients here. Send him the file. So spacecat got the file, and here is the file. Let's send a file to commit chaser, and he got the file too. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, learned something new. If you have any question, let me know in the comments, and if you have any video idea, also feel free to suggest that.